Volerai altissimo.
L'astronauta comprese che l'unico modo per rincontrare i suoi cari era costruire una macchina del tempo.
Buon pomeriggio a tutti.
Good afternoon to you all, and welcome to this meeting that is gonna be held on the first day of the 32nd meeting of friendship amongst peoples. I welcome all of you who are here with us and the people who are joining us. Greetings to all the people who are connected with us from Italy and from all over the world. Today we have the privilege to have with us two protagonists, two young protagonists. They are young, but still they are very meaningful in the ecclesial life throughout the world. We invited them to speak about the self, faith, and the challenge of cultures. At a very challenging time for the life of history and the world. To my left, you see Adrien Candiard. And to my right, Agbonkhianmeghe Orobator. Sorry, maybe I mispronounced your names. He prefers to be called Matto. It's hard to pronounce his name. We are very grateful to them today. Until some days ago, we actually didn't really know that they could be here with us, present in this room. And given the international protocols, it was really very hard for them to come here to Rimini. But their presence tells us today that they really wanted to be with us today, in presence. And for this gesture of real friendship that they have, we ideally kneel before them, and we thank them for that. Father Candiard is a Dominican from Paris. He is a member of the Dominican Institut of Eastern Studies, IDEO. He lives in Egypt. He is in the front line in the meeting and the dialogue with the Muslim world. And with modernity in the Western world. He is focusing on freedom. Recently, he wrote a book on that. Réflexion sur la liberté chrétienne. And Father Orobator is a Nigerian Jesuit. He is president of the Jesuit Conference of Africa and Madagascar. He is a theologian. And he bears witness of the radical change of the look of a man who, as an adult, converts to Christianity, rediscovering and enhancing all its heritage, the African animism, where he grew up and he was raised. Their life shows us, and we will listen to them, how Catholic faith puts men in the optimum condition to meet and have a dialogue with anyone, with no exceptions. Let me take the opportunity to thank, on behalf of the meeting, Lorenzo Fazzini, who is the publisher of EMI, publishing the works of our two guests, without whom today's meeting would have not been possible. Thank you. In today's world, in the Western world, and throughout the world, faith and especially Catholic faith, is no longer a shared mindset, is no longer a commonly accepted heritage. It is one of the many proposals that exist in the complex and varied offer of religions today. So, how can Christians be aware? How can Christians communicate the hope that faith can generate in people embracing faith? Since we are living in a pluralistic world, we need to be more aware of what we believe in, because we no longer live in privileged contexts. We no longer live in societies where faith is protected somehow. We may complain about this. We may protest because things are not like we would like them to be. But this can also be a wonderful opportunity, the great opportunity to become even more aware of the reason why today, in 2021, we are and continue to be Christians. Because this enables us to show everyone that faith can be useful for life, for the things in life. Is faith still attractive today? Does faith still have some chances today in this pluralistic world, which is so varied and which is so different in the different regions? Cardinal Ratzinger said yes in 1996, and he said, yes, faith can still be attractive, because it is in line with man's nature. It is consistent with man's natures. In man, there is some nostalgic aspiration towards the infinite. So, in order to be attractive, in order to be useful for life, Christianity can only go one way. Can only have a dialogue with the heart of man. Man who desires for freedom and happiness. And Father Giussani, who was the founder of this movement, underlined that Christ is the answer to who I am. And this is the big topic of this year's meeting, the I. Just by being aware, in a tender way, just by being aware of oneself, a man can acknowledge, can admire, can thank, and can live Christ. Without this awareness, Jesus Christ becomes only a name. In today's context, where to many of our friends Christ is not known, Christian faith must show that it can be useful for man. Through a simple tool that Pope Francis continues to tell us always, meeting and dialogue. This is what Pope Francis always underlines, a meeting and dialogue. Cardinal Ratzinger at that time stated that the meeting among cultures is possible because man, despite differences in his history and in his creations, is just one human being. One being. And Pope Francis, in his message to the meeting, especially at a time like ours, where fear shows a deep existential insecurity and fear plays a fundamental role, he says that the human being is still in the constant search for the way to tackle life. And the President of the Italian Republic, Sergio Mattarella, in his opening speech a few hours ago, connected from Rome, reiterated that the I, acknowledging the common destiny of human beings, is the cornerstone of coexistence. This is why we have invited you to give you your personal witness based on some questions that we are all asked to answer today. How do you see the challenge of cultures in Egypt and Africa? Is it possible for a man with a clear identity, with its history and tradition, can this man have a meeting and meet peoples with other cultures and with other religions? And last but not least, what can faith tell today's man? The man that Garmoren called the age of uncertainty. Father Orobator, I give you the floor.
Thank you very much, Alberto. Now, to understand my story of self, faith, and culture, there are two things you need to know about me. The first, I am Agbonkhianmeghe. I did not become a human being on the day I was born. Where I come from in my culture, when a child is born, until that child receives a name, that child does not belong to the community of the living. And so, my name, Agbonkhianmeghe, is what makes me human. In my culture, naming is important. We embrace one another by our names. If I cannot call you by name, I cannot recognize your humanity. I cannot recognize your dignity. And you cannot recognize mine either. My name confers on me the privileges of individuality. But my name is not a wall. It's a door. My name is a bridge. It's not a barrier. My name opens a channel for meeting other people. The second thing you must know about me is that there was a time when I was not a Christian. I was born into African religion and later converted to Christianity. My mother was a devotee of the goddess of the sea, Olokun, the giver of fertility and progress. My father patronized all manner of courts and deities, including Osanobua, the creator of the universe, the God of Jesus Christ. Before my conversion, Christians treated me with contempt. They called me all manner of names. I was called a fetishist, an idolater, a heathen, an animist. This abusive rhetoric was actually a systematic assault on my spirituality. So when I transitioned from African religion to Christianity, I was expected to reject my entire religious heritage. I even received the new name, Emmanuel, because the catechist at the time judged that Agbonkhianmeghe was pagan and was not worthy of a Christian. Fortunately, I opted not to reject my African religious heritage. How could I? How could I reject the most defining experiences of my life as an adult? As we say in Africa, no matter how many times a leopard crosses the river, it never loses its spots. Today, I am a proud child of two universes. African religion awakened my reality, my consciousness of reality, and Christianity expanded it and deepened it. I appreciate and I celebrate these religious foundations, but I can also question them when it's necessary. I believe that God continues to manifest God's self to me in my cultural and religious foundations. My Christian faith did not refuse my African heritage or culture or tradition. Instead, my Christian faith has allowed me to deepen and enhance the deep religious sensitivity and attitudes of my ancestor. Yes, there are times when I experience tension. There are times when I strive for integration and harmony. And there is always the temptation towards alienation and also syncretism. But I'm consoled when I think of the words of Paul VI, when he said, "The African who becomes a Christian does not disown himself or herself, but takes up the age-old values of tradition in spirit and in truth." Now, I'd like to share with you three things. Three things that I learned from my animist background, which will respond to the question that Alberto posed, which will respond to what he defined as the search for meaning. Three things that I believe our world desperately needs today. And these three things are solidarity, fraternity, and hospitality. Let me begin with solidarity. What does it mean to be an animist? In my experience of African religion, to be an animist is to be in solidarity, to be in a relationship of solidarity with all of creation. I believe deeply in the livingness of creation. Nothing is lifeless in my environment. There is always an invisible spirit, power, that gives life to everything. And I know that Pope Francis shares this belief, because in Laudato Si, he tells us that each creature has its own purpose. Nothing is superfluous. Soil, water, mountains, everything is, as it were, a caress of God. When I profess my belief in the livingness of creation, I also accept a moral duty to protect environmental ecology and human ecology. Why? Because both ecologies are constituted not only by matter, but by spirit. And African religion agrees with Christianity that the creation is a wonderful gift of God that we can use legitimately and responsibly while maintaining the balance. I believe that there is an interdependence of forces. There is a vital connection between me and the earth. And so when I assume my duty to protect and to save the earth, I am not doing Mother Earth a favor. No, I'm saving myself and my world, because I can only save myself by saving my world. That is the first lesson from my African religious background. The second thing that I learned from my religious background is what Pope Francis calls fraternity. You probably have read his encyclical Fratelli Tutti. In Africa, we call it Ubuntu. When Pope Francis says that each of us is fully a person when we are part of a people, and that at the same time there are no peoples without respect for the individuality of the person, he is speaking Ubuntu. He is saying Umuntu Ngumuntu Gabantu. A person is a person because of other people. A person is a person through other people. In other words, I am because we are. So you can see that Ubuntu is the core of African religion and culture. It prioritizes inclusion, community, hospitality, dialogue, and respect. As an African Christian, I believe in the Ubuntu culture of the primacy of human relationship. According to the Weltanschauung of Ubuntu, the courage to say I should not turn me into an isolated conscience. The courage to say I means that I depend vitally on other people. My existence, my humanity bursts forth through the interactions with people. It means to be human is to be engaged, to be open to the other. Because my humanity is sustained by the relationality that I share with others. In Tanzania, we say mountains do not meet, people meet. So in this sense, Ubuntu is that creative openness to one another. To say that I am because we are is to embrace a universe of relationships that is infinitely open and inclusive. And to say that I am because we are is to fulfill my obligation to others, to the earth, and to God. So for me, today, we need this uniting vision of Ubuntu to repair the fabric of our humanity. The third thing that I learned from my African background is hospitality. If I became a Christian, it is partly because of this spirit of hospitality. African religion welcomed Christianity and Islam to Africa. This is the kind of spirit we need today to realize our desire for reconciliation and to build bridges. As I lived African religion does not proselytize, does not claim superiority. No. And that is why the spirit of this religion remains relevant for our world. I know this spirit. This spirit is a spirit of tolerance. It is a spirit of inclusiveness. And that's what we need today. Let me offer a few concluding remarks. Like many millions of Africans, I, Agbonkhianmeghe, have made a transition from my ancestral faith to Christianity. This is not an easy journey. I am on a journey. I'm on a pilgrimage. Because my faith as an African is a way of life. It's a way of being. It's not a set of creeds or dogmas or doctrines. Yes, Søren Kierkegaard, the Danish philosopher, was right to dare each one of us to have the courage to say I. But as the philosopher, Martin Buber has taught us, for my I to be authentic, it has to be a starting point. It has to be a common ground. It has to be a mysterious center for encountering the other. My faith as an African celebrates this relationship, the I-thou relationship. Even if the thou, a tree, a person, a work of art, or God. In their document on fraternity, Pope Francis and Grand Imam Ahmed El Tayyib teach us that faith leads a believer to see in the other person a brother or a sister to be supported. If I cannot genuinely embrace the presence and the pain of an other in encounter, in dialogue, and relationship, then my faith is not courage. It is cowardice. My faith is not sacrifice. It is selfishness. As Pope Francis has taught us, we need a movement of people who know we need each other, who have a sense of responsibility for one another. And so for me, the courage to say I is the courage to encounter my brothers and my sisters. This kind of meeting is humanizing, is transformative. Let me finish with the words of Paul VI. He said, people must meet people. Nation must meet nation as brothers and sisters, as children of God. In this mutual understanding and friendship, in this sacred communion, we must also continue to work together to build a common future of the human race. And I believe, as I sit here today, that for this future to become real, it must be founded on solidarity, on fraternity, and hospitality. May this be our creed in Rimini and in the world. Thank you.
È veramente affascinante.
Now, it's really fascinating to see all that embodied in a person, to see the positivity of a look that is made possible by faith. This ability to enhance whatever is human and is part of us. When I read the book Confessions of an Animist, where Mato, as I call him, told the difficult journey of his conversion to Christianity in Africa, I took some notes, and I read a sentence that Pope Sentence said a few years ago when he met Father Giussani, and I will read it to you because it describes what we have just heard from Mato. Christianity never realizes in history as a fixity of positions to be defended, relating to the new as pure antithesis. Christianity is a principle of redemption, which takes on the new and saves it. The Pope quoted it as a description of his idea of an outgoing church, a church that could meet anyone. And now, let's hear on that Father Candiard. I'll give you the floor. Thank you. Thanks to all of you for being here. I'm really very honored that you have invited me here and that you are here under these difficult conditions. I'm a bit intimidated, to be honest, not just because I have to speak Italian. So be indulgent with me, and I hope that Manzoni also will be indulgent with me, because I will make a few mistakes here and there, with my subjunctives especially. Thank you. I'm also intimidated because, Alberto, you asked us for our witness. You have asked us to have the courage to say I. It's a courage that, honestly, I don't have. Usually, I prefer talking about more interesting things like the Bible or the letter to Philemon that you mentioned. It's true. I lived through this challenge of cultures. I experienced this challenge of cultures, and I can talk about it somehow. My superiors sent me to Cairo, Egypt, to study Islam. They sent me. I didn't choose it. I became a member of the Dominican Institut of Instant Studies, the IDEO, where we work on classic Islam as good Dominicans. We read old books of Islam throughout the day, and we discuss with other researchers and scholars, Muslim ones especially, in Egypt. They asked me to go to Egypt. I wanted to become a biblicist. And I didn't embrace the cult of Dominicans to study Islam. So at the beginning, I said to myself, but why should I go to Egypt and read about Islam theologies throughout the day, books full of dust that no one ever reads? Why should I go there? But I found out many things. This Islam theology of the Middle Ages is very interesting. I should be now finalizing my PhD thesis on that. This is something I will do after my after the meeting. And I found out something very interesting. When I was sent to Egypt, I thought I was somewhat in exile. I was at the borders of the church as a diplomat that should go and deal with neighbors while important people deal with the church mission, the real church mission. So while browsing through these books, I found out that I had made a mistake. Actually, I had been sent to the center of the church mission, because the church must be at the service of the Holy Spirit. So, oftentimes, we speak about our relationship with the world, the relationship between the world and the church, and the dialogue between the church and the world. But I think that we make a mistake in that. When we think about what we should say to the world, we make a mistake. This is not interesting because we, as Christians, must serve something else. Another conversation, not our dialogue, not our conversation, but the eternal and the ancient dialogue between God and the world. This is what we must serve. We must not serve our conversation with the world. It's not our dialogue with the world and the dialogue between the church and God, but we must serve the dialogue that God started with the first man and that continues with all men. Oftentimes, there's no way out when we think differently, when we think that our mission is to state the positions of the church. No one is interested in the church positions. Why? Because everyone believes that they know the church positions. We're not saying anything new to people. I don't think that the church mission is to be acknowledged as an expert. We know what Pope Paul VI said. The church is an expert on mankind. And after all the scandals of the recent years, this is a bit ironic. But our mission as a church is not to make everyone know our opinion. We waste our time in doing this. We need to serve something that takes us out of our comfort zone. When the Pope criticizes the fact that the church is self-referential, he thinks about that. What happens inside the church is just a distraction. For example, just to talk about what happened this summer, all the debate around the Roman rights, the extraordinary rights, seen from the perspective of Egypt and Cairo, seems to be a waste of time. It's a total waste of time. It's not that it's not important, but it's not the most important thing. There are more urgent things to do. And we need to serve Christ. Christ, which always comes before us. As he tells us, the apostles during his resurrections, he's always before us in Galilee, in the Galilee of nations. We must serve the Spirit that has always been talking to man, has always had a dialogue with man, this dialogue that began before us as human beings and before us as a church. The Bible tells us the history of the conversation between God and the world, where revelation plays an important part, but it's not just the only thing. It's not just the only important thing. God continues this dialogue, continues this conversation through individual experiences of us all, of all men. God is interested in all men and women, and he has a dialogue with all men and women. But he's not only doing that through individuals, but also, as John Paul II said, through societies and through religions, which might seem a bit awkward. How can God speak to people through not only their personal feelings, but also through their religions? How is that possible? It doesn't mean that all religions all tend to God. I don't want to be relativist here. But Through religions, God can speak to the heart of people. Our mission is to serve this dialogue, is to help everyone to listen to the voice of God and the voice of Jesus and the Spirit of Jesus. Sometimes we would like to replace God, and we would like to explain things to men, but the most difficult thing is to evangelize people through their own experience of God. This is what is interesting. And this is something we need to do with people. We need to help Catholics. We need to accompany people. This is our role as fathers. We help people in their personal dialogue with God. This is true with societies, and this is true for religions. And the mission I was given when I was sent to Cairo is exactly that, as in to establish a dialogue with Muslims to help them to listen, even in their tradition, the voice of God. I do talk about Jesus, but it's also interesting to listen and try to understand, in a religion like Islam, try to understand where God can find a place and how God can reveal himself. Even in Islam, God continues his dialogue with people. And to me, this is the real meaning of evangelization. I think that we get on very well together. When you were saying, for example, that there's no opposition between your life in the past and your life as a Christian, your life as an animist and your life as a Christian, but your life as an animist brought you to Christianity, and we agree on that. We are fully in line. The idea is to evangelize, to promote the dialogue with God, which has already started in the past. Hence, a theology which would oppose the announcement of faith and interreligious dialogue would be wrong. It would be wrong because if dialogue is well understood, it is a real way to evangelize people. When we talk about talking about Muslims, we have some specific problems. Because Islam is not just a different religion that was developed in another culture, like African cultures, Buddhism, which has nothing to do with Christianity. The problem, the difficulty with Islam is that since its beginning, it goes directly against some elements of Christianity which are quite important, like Trinity, for example, or redemption, or resurrection. So the most difficult thing is that, as a culture, Islam developed against the Christian Western world. As for centuries, the Christian Western world has developed against the Islam world. This is why cultures become no longer a leverage for evangelization, but a barrier, an obstacle. In Europe and in Italy, many people feel threatened by Islam. They don't want to be open. They don't want to open to Islam because they see Islam as a threat. And maybe in yourself, if you think about it, inside of you, you feel that Islam is to some extent a threat. But just imagine to tell a Muslim Egyptian, you say to this Muslim Egyptian, you are a threat to us. You Muslims are a threat to us. What will they answer to you? Well, you feel threatened. Why? Why do you feel threatened? Are there any Muslim armies attacking you in your country? No, this is not the case. There are Western armies going to Muslim countries. They could be threatened by Christianity. Do you feel threatened from a cultural point of view? When you go to the movies, for example, do you watch Arab movies? In Egypt, we watch James Bond. We watch films from the Western culture. Why should the West feel threatened by the Muslim world? Do you need to wear their clothes? Do you need to dress just like they dress? No, not at all. And I'm saying that not just because I think that they are the ones that should feel threatened, but because threat is a shared idea, both in Christianity and in the Islam world. It's like two citadels. Citadels looking at each other with a suspicion, and this suspicion is an enormous obstacle, barrier to the light of God, because in evangelizing people, you don't only have to provide good arguments, you need to create an opportunity to meet Jesus Christ. And the problem here, the difficulty here, is that Jesus Christ can be acknowledged as the flag of the enemies by some people in the Muslim world. The enemies that would like to destroy the Muslim world. And under these circumstances, it is impossible to evangelize people. One cannot let himself touch by the face of Christ. If the face of Christ is not interpreted in the right way. So there is only one strategy that is possible today that we should use. If you want to evangelize and if we want to talk about Christ to a different culture, like Islamic culture, as in disarmament, as in we need to get out of our comfort zone and of our threatened citadel. And we need to be open. And this is what we try to do in Cairo and what we should do, every one of us, at our level. We do it in an intellectual way, but there are also other ways to do it. We need to understand that we are different. We believe in different things, we Christians and Muslims, but we can accept that other people believe in something else. We don't need to quarrel for that. And we can do that only by accepting a real dialogue, not a strategic dialogue, where I pretend I'm listening to you, but actually I'm not. If you want to be listened to, first you must listen to others. You must listen to others, and you need to get out of your biases. Biases on who you are, what you want. and why you want to convince other people to embrace your faith. We need to take this step. We need to abandon our weapons. We need, in order to share our faith. The real courage to say I is that one. It's not to say I am Christianity and I will give you all arguments on Trinities and Thomas or other theologists. No. I need to tell you what I believe in. And this makes people afraid. Because maybe the other one will have better arguments than you have. Because maybe others can make fun of you. But if I'm brave enough, if I have the courage to say I and to say that I believe this, then I can promote a real dialogue. And a real dialogue can only be made among human beings which have the same difficulties, the same problems. I, Christian, what can I do in order to live in this strange world? I can live in this world through God, and I need to tell others who Christ is for me as a Christian. There's a prerequisite for that. There must be friendship. There must be friendship in order to say that I believe I need to trust the person I'm talking to. Otherwise, it will be very difficult. If I don't trust the other, then it's difficult to convey the message. If I believe that the other will exploit me, then I will never be true. So first and foremost, there must be mutual trust, mutual confidence, mutual friendship. This is the only way we can serve the meeting and we can serve dialogue. And this is the only way we can say I, so that the other can receive the thou. And I will now conclude, because as a good preacher, I can go on for ages and hours and hours. Thank you for your attention. Let me conclude like this.
E noi continueremo ad ascoltare.
And we would love to keep listening to you. It is so interesting and poignant to hear your words, to listen to this idea of faith that tries to support the other, to help the other listen to God's voice and not to convince him or her about the good grounds of another idea. But I mean, how can people accept this kind of risk? There's nothing to be taken for granted, because the dialogue is not between me and the other, but it's between Christ and the other. It's a mystery, and I cannot do nothing but be sure and certain that the heart of the other, Muslim or non-Muslim, Christian or non-Christian, is inhabited by the mystery. And Don Giussani used to say something special about it. He used to use words linked by a hyphen. I am you that make me. So this is the essence of God that turns the individual into a being. So if this method could start to, be effective, that would be amazing. So we have little time, but I'd like to ask you another question. So a very, very small final conclusion on the title of the meeting. And the Pope, in his message, mentioned Don Abbondio by Manzoni, the fact that, you cannot try to make courage for yourself, so not alone. So today, men and women, considering the current situation and the current context, how can people today, can they find the courage to say I without, falling into the trap of fear?
Thank you very much. And I think it's not only the temptation to fall into fear. I think the biggest temptation is to fall into individualism, to be locked in my own world. The courage to say I is really the courage to take the first step towards the other. But if I take a step towards the other, it is because I have a witness, I have a testimony. As Father said, I have something to share. I have something beneficial to the other. In my experience, that is my faith. It is my faith which is my encounter with ultimate reality, with God. And I think that is the challenge we face. And that's why it's important that on a forum like this, our individual I has to be inclusive and open to everybody else. That's important for me.
Grazie. Adrien?
Thank you. In my opinion, this fear may be generated, especially in a context where we try to announce the gospel. And it may stem from the difficulty of saying hi and just I. Sometimes we would like to represent the whole church and to represent God. You said that it's hard to not try to replace God, but that's the key, not trying to replace God. Very often we are tempted by replacing God because we think that God, does not convey the gospel, enough. But when I think that success depends on me, well, that's where and when fear is generated. So when I think that I should push people to believe, I take up a role that is absolutely impossible. And that prevents me from doing what I could really do and perform. Because if I try to replace God, I prevent myself from being myself and doing my part. In my opinion, for every Christian, it is extremely important to remember that the Savior of the world, it's a role that is already taken. So the job is not available, so to speak, allow me to say. So Don Carron, who is the president of the Fraternity of Communion and Liberation, usually says, it's not up to you to save the world, it's up to somebody else, so just relax. Oh, yes. When I was appointed as prior in my cloister in Cairo, and every time I get out the door, I touch a little key holder representing some mountain dogs. Yes, Saint Bernard. So they are miniature dogs. And I think to myself, okay, you are not a Saint Bernard dog, so you don't have to see people. Just do your thing, what you can do, and it's going to be more than enough. Well, this gives us a lot of hope to see two young people that are already so mature in their experience of faith and sharing their testimony, because through their experiences we can grow. So we really heard what faith can contribute today. In the Numen Fide, the Pope says, the encounter with Christ enlargen and broaden up the horizon of life. It gives it a solid hope that never disappoints. So faith is not a refuge, a hideaway for people without courage. Not at all. It's the sort of dilatation of life. So faith is not a light shedding light on darkness, but it's a light enlightening our pathway at night, and this is more than enough. So for every person in pain, when faced with these two so hard years, it's so difficult for the whole world, so to suffering and painful man, God does not give one-size-fits-all answer, solving everything, not at all. It gives an answer through the form of a presence that accompanies, that sustains. And thanks to this, it makes that dialogue with mystery go forward. And this is something that fills us with wonder. And I end up with this quotation by Don Carron, who says about this sense of wonder that is not the result of our effort and abilities. And he says, it's a different way of being in the world, stemming from faith. And we have been overwhelmed by the certainty of Christ, and we are surprised by this sense of emotional plenitude. We can look at everything in a different way, in a new way, in a freer way, without the desire to conquer or to dominate upon the other. It's a surprise. It's a wonder. The Christian fruit is a surprise. It's a wonder along the pathway of belonging to Christ. And this is first and foremost a wonder for us, for ourselves. And I discover dynamics that are not my own, ways of doing that are different from those I had before, that are more authentic. As Father Orobator and Father Candiard testified to us this afternoon. And we really hope that once again this meeting will testify this willingness to restart in spite of all risks. So I would like to thank our guests and all of you for your participation. And I want to remind you that this meeting was organized with a lot of work and sacrifice and a lot of complications. And we are here thanks to the voluntary work of many people, and thanks also to your generosity, because each one of you can and tries to support us. So please, if you can, if you want, donate, because if you think that it's useful and worth for you and for everybody, you can donate, because the meeting sustains hope, dialogue with our brothers and sisters. Thank you very much again, and good afternoon, everybody.
Volerai altissimo.
L'astronauta comprese che l'unico modo per rincontrare i suoi cari era costruire una macchina del tempo.